Hello, welcome to 7th grade Streets. I am going to do a Microsoft Word reading in 3 parts of all 12 chapters. There'll be 4 chapters in each part, so in the first part I'll do 1, 2, 3, and 4. In the second part I'll do 5, 6, 7, 8, and on the third part I'll do 9, 10, 11, 12. Welcome to 7th grade Streets. And There's going to be some small faults in the readings, but I hope you can look past that and just keep following along. When I found them, when I watched them, I went back and recorrected them. So on YouTube, on the comment section down below, or even on Cartoons Brennan, just put a little comment on the bottom. It could help me out with grammar. It could help you out with grammar. So I would sure appreciate some comments.
Old Town School. Did you ever have one of those years where everything works out well, as if all problems that have ever existed vanished from the past as well as the future, so that, when a problem occurred, it seemed absolutely horrifying? Well, if you have, then you will know what it was like for my 6th grade year to end, and my 7th grade year to begin. Problems everywhere. In my first day at Old Town School, in my first class, a kid, who I personally thought was friendly, appeared to be mocking me. I thought it could have been my mind playing tricks on me, so I covered it up. At recess, because I was the new kid, some of the other kids, at this new school, thought to initiate me by attempting to pull off some of my clothes, and if that wasn't bad enough, around 2 o'clock I sat hunched over a computer and my back got very sore. Finally, 3 o'clock came around, and I got on the bus, and even on the bus some, or at least one of the 8th graders decided to make fun of me. The most horrifying part of the whole story is, I have been waiting to start this school since January, and now it is September, and I am miserable. Miserable with my first day. My stomach was sick walking up to the driveway to my parents' house. I consider the day. With great anticipation I thrusted myself into this new school, and now I am crushed. All the years past dreams have faded, or rather disappeared, with no hopes at retrieving them, no new friends and no fun times. All was thrown to the floor. A creak sounded as I opened the door to my home. "How was your first day at Old Town School?" my mom asks. How was I supposed to answer that? Like, I hate life, I never want to go back to that school again. She would not have understood, so I made up the words to how I was doing that evening. I made them up in a way I thought she would want to hear them. "Great, Mom." "Hey, that didn't sound right. What's wrong?" my mom asks. Even if I had told her, I knew she would not understand. How can I explain my entire life crumbling to the floor? And even if I did, would she not have said, "Everything is going to be all right"? I ought to do that for myself. So, I attempted it, but I could not get her to leave me alone. Apparently, she wanted to share in my excitement in the new school. I knew from past lessons not to let her down. In the past I did, and it hurt, so I convinced myself that I would never let her down again, especially if I was in a bad mood or I was unaware that she has emotions, i.e. speak only good words, so I spoke the best thing I could think of. "I got a lot of homework, Mom." "Is that a good thing?" she asks. "Yes, I just don't want to do it," I said. I was hoping that was enough, that she would leave me alone, that these are the pleasant words she wants to hear. "Well, take your time. If you have any troubles, I can call the school and see how they can help." Then she kissed me on the head, and off I went to my bedroom. I threw my giant black backpack on onto my nicely made bottom bunk, and went, and sat down at a small desk, that sat next to a window overlooking a thick forest growing in the back of our home. This defies the laws to life, I thought, as I began to consider the purpose for having such a glorious 6th grade year. I had high hopes of this new school, Old Town School, and it was not only new, but there was a small, soda shop attached to it, and there was this girl I met through my father's business with her dad, hundreds of miles away in Georgia. She was the reason we moved here, because her dad invited us from a small swamp in Georgia, to Massachusetts, so that he could work for a famous animation company. And now, after all we, mostly me, did to get up here, me continuously reminding my dad how happy we would be to move, I am now miserable. How could I of all people be mocked my first day of school? Do you know who I am? Do you know who my father is? I wish I could have said that, but of course that would have made me look like I have issues and I don't. Plus I've seen other kids who mildly got pushed into isolation for appearing as if they had issues. They didn't fare so well. I do not even want to do my homework, I thought. What do I have to do anyway? Oh yeah, I remember I had an awfully long list of math problems, and an art project. I decided to start with the art project first. Hours went by like minutes, and then I hear my mom call me for supper. "Brian, food's ready." "Okay, I'll be right there," I said, and I began walking down the narrow stairs that led to the front door. Once at the front door I took a left, walking through the living room and then into the kitchen. I sat down at the kitchen table. My plate was already prepared. I began to immediately chow down. My dad says, "Brian, you're awfully quiet. I figured your mouth would have a lot to say. After all, you've talked about your plans for this new move, especially this new school for an entire year. How did it go? How was your first day at Old Town School?" Suddenly it hit me, my day went bad, and I do not know what to tell my dad. I am the one that convinced him to move here. I pushed him and pushed him until we moved. I panicked. I was wrong. I hated my first day of school. I hated my existence. I was too embarrassed to tell him the truth, so I put on a smile, and forced down the little bit of food I had left on my plate and said, "Great Dad, I got a lot of homework though. I must be off to finish it. I would not want to fail my 7th grade year." I went back into my room. I looked at my desk to see my half-finished art project. I sat down and went back to work. Before I knew it, my mom says, "Honey, lights out. It's 10 o'clock. "Okay, Mom," I replied. I began walking out of my bedroom. To shut off the light switch, I looked back at my partially done art project, a cardboard house with magazine cutouts of people, glued to cardboard cutouts, making miniature people in my cardboard house, and whispered I didn't finish. Not only did I not finish the art project, but I did not finish the long list of math problems. I shut off my bedroom light, walked back into my room, pulled back the cozy, fluffy, Spider-Man themed quilt on the bottom bunk bed, and climbed into the inside of the comforter. I thought, what am I going to tell my teachers? Why didn't I finish my homework? Quickly I fell asleep. Within a blink of an eye, morning came. Sunlight poured through my bedroom window. One of the first thoughts I had was, I wonder why or how morning came so quickly, and especially how can I tell the difference, which I can. It is as if there was no night at all. I can remember nights when my parents forced me up all night. Even when morning came, I could not convince myself I slept, as if my mind would not give permission for me to normally live the next day. Only if my mind witnessed that I slept, then, and only then, could I have the joy of the day. In other words, there isn't cheating sleep. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but for me to live normal, I have to, get the report or chemical that says, feel good you slept. I crept out into the hallway, opened the door to the bathroom, walked in, and cleaned up. Walking out of the bathroom, I flicked the bathroom light off, and began to walk down the stairs. I anxiously made my way to the kitchen expecting breakfast to be made. I was hungry. "Where is breakfast?" I said, looking at the kitchen table. I looked around, only to find my dad walking out of the front door. "Brian," my dad said, "your mother has already left. She had to meet some people at the local country store for a business proposal. Can you make yourself breakfast?" "Yes," I replied. He closed the front door, and as he did that, I considered that he was acting odd. Why didn't he beforehand tell me my mother was not going to be here this morning? The front door pops back open and I hear my dad say, "Brian, you can get on the bus, right? I know it's only your second day." The bus shows up a block down the road, next to Martha's house, in the parking lot of the Legion. "Yeah, Dad, I can get on the bus," I replied. "And lock yourself out on the way out," my dad yells as he overshuts the front door. I opened the fridge and began to look for something to eat, but there was nothing good. I walked over to the cupboard and I happily noticed strawberry Pop-Tarts. I grabbed 2 of them and went back upstairs and got dressed. While eating my Pop-Tarts, I jogged up the street to the Legion. I began to wait for the bus. Within 5 minutes the bus arrived. A big yellow bus pulls up in front of the Legion. The doors pop open. I pause for a moment, and I hear, "Are you going to get on?" "Yes," I replied. I carefully walk up the narrow stairs and began to head toward the back of the bus. The bus driver asks, "Brian, right?" "Yes," I said. "No food or drink on the bus. Put that in your bag for later." I forgot. I still had one of the Pop-Tarts in my hand, and quickly responded politely, "Okay, sorry about that." I feel very aware, more aware than I have been in the past. It's as if the past couple of days I've been in an entirely different universe. As I walk toward the back of the bus, I consider the other kids. What do they think of me? What will they think if I sit up front? What will they think if I sit in the back? Will I be rejected if I sit where the other children do not? I wonder if the back of the bus is safe. I will sit in the back. Hopefully no one will notice my insecurities. I threw my giant black backpack on the gray, plastic-like right back seat. An orange-haired child was sitting in the left seat. Children were talking throughout the bus. I even heard some talk about me. "He must be new here. He looks weird. Why is he in the back?" I was shocked and disturbed. I do not remember the entire bus trip to Old Town School. I must have fallen asleep hating life. I feel sick, I thought, as I walked through the double doors of school. My eyes felt heavy. The light within the school affected my being, as if I was like, double awake, maybe even on the moon or something, but I've never been on the moon. I quickly found my class and took a seat, hoping my insecurities would not be noticed. In my old school, the previous school I went to, I would, by now, be talking to someone, but here I cannot find the words to speak. One class came and another went, and then I started my art class. I have been looking forward to this class because I got the homework done, and I wanted to impress the teacher. "Okay kids, please turn in your homework you did last night, and I will share them with the rest of the class, Ms. Shine," the teacher says. First Bill went up, dropped off his homework, an art project, then Kelly with her cloth puppet and then me. Expecting the teacher to give me a praise, I quickly and anxiously went up to deliver my creative cardboard house, with cardboard/magazine characters on the inside. Once I arrived in front of the teacher, I handed her my art project. My eyes were wide open, eager to see a smile, only to find a disappointing look on her face. "Okay, Brian, thank you. You can go sit back down now," Ms. Shine says. I got a sick feeling in my stomach as I walked back to my desk, thinking there was not a, "You're wonderful, Brian." There was no, "Wow, that is more than I expected." Nothing, only a look of disappointment. I cannot remember if Ms. Shine showed off my art project that day. I was too sick. Thank goodness lunch came around fast. My jeans are too tight, I thought as I sat alone at my lunch table, and too sick to get something to eat. The other children seemed to be treating me odd. They seemed to look at me different and laugh. Although it could be because I have never been in a new school before. I never switched schools. I've been in the same school up to now, so I did not take it personal. I just was extremely uncomfortable. Within a split second my problems vanished. They went away for a moment. Someone made this day wonderful. Someone came to liberate me from such misery. A girl, a beautiful blue-haired girl. It seemed as if she was liberated to do as she pleased, that she had many options in the school. I would have never thought she would have welcomed herself to come sit with me, but she did. Blue/brown eyes looked straight into mine. "How are you doing today?" the young girl said with the sophistication of one of the teachers. I said, "Great," to blend in with her appearance of having a great day. We talked to one another throughout lunch. She gave me her phone number. Written with blue ink, on a handwritten note, she asked me to call her that night. The rest of the day was miserable. Cindy, the girl I met at lunch, was not in any of my other classes, and without her, I was affected by what I thought was bad luck, lack of goodness, and haunted by the atmosphere of the school. "Ask Brian to do it," one of the children said to my math teacher, Mr. Wine. "Kyle." "I asked you to do it," Mr. Wine said. "Brian can do it, that's why he is so quiet, because he is pretending to be responsible," the child sitting behind Brian's right side said. I was so embarrassed, I forgot all about the good time I had with Cindy. Once I was fully aware I was being targeted, I did not say anything back. Who knows, it truly could be all one big misinterpretation. I closed off my emotions and hoped for the school day to end. It was my last class of the day, so I didn't have much of the day left. Maybe I can ask my dad if we can move, if we can find a new home, or possibly even if he could homeschool me. I got on the bus and shortly I was home. "How was school?" my dad asked. I stumbled in my mind. I did not want to tell him how I felt, and I knew he wanted to hear everything was great. Thoughts flooded my mind, and then I remembered Cindy. I quickly responded and said, "Oh, I met a girl named Cindy. Do you mind if I use the phone later? She wanted me to call her after school." "No, I don't mind," my dad replied. I rushed into the living room, pulled out the handwritten note Cindy gave me, lovingly written with blue ink, her phone number carefully placed on it, and I placed it by the phone. Later that evening, after supper, I dialed her phone number. "Can I speak to Cindy?" I said to the person who picked up the phone. "Who is this?" the person on the other end of the phone asked. "This is Brian. I'm a new student at Old Town School. Cindy asked me to call her after school." "Cindy," someone yells through the speaker of the phone. "Hello," Cindy said in a calm, quiet voice. "Hi Cindy, it's Brian. I met you at school today," anticipating a lovely reply. "Oh yeah, Brian, good you called," Cindy said. We spent hours talking to one another, and in doing so I forgot all about my troubles, especially the troubles at school. We talked for so long, that I did not get my homework done. The next morning, I woke up considering in depth how I could get out of school. I did not care anymore. I walked into the kitchen and noticed my dad had already prepared breakfast. He stood in the corner next to the doorway to his bedroom. He looked at me with a sad look. I expected to hear bad news. The expression on his face told me he was about to tell me something I didn't want to hear. "Brian, I hate to do this to you, but we need to move. We need to move back to Georgia. I know you have been waiting a long time to move here, to Massachusetts, and your hopes have been high. I don't want to ruin them, but we have to move back," my dad says with purpose. I inwardly was happy. I could have shouted for joy, but I already covered up my hatred and made the appearance of being happy about Old Town School. So I said, "That's okay Dad, we will do good there too." "Good, I'm glad you said that Brian. I'm going to need to keep you home from school today. I need your help packing. This weekend we leave for Georgia. I spent the next couple of days happy. All my problems left. I was desperate to leave this school. Before I knew it, I was back in the moving truck, moving to Georgia. I did not look back. I was so afflicted about Old Town School, I didn't want to consider it part of my life. Once we arrived in Georgia, we pull up to the house we recently moved out of, the sign reading, "House for sale," the one that was just put up a few weeks ago, the one that was still in the front yard. The thick swampy forest surrounding the house sort of gave me that trapped in the house feeling. The swamp was so dense, I didn't know what lived in there. Growing up I received so many warnings about poisonous creatures all throughout the swamp. We walk into the house, my dad looks at me and says, "It's good to be home, right?" Now we do the unpacking thing again. A phone rings, I look to see where it is coming from, and I notice my dad reaching for his pocket. "Yeah," my dad says, answering the phone. "What?" "Wow." He looks at me and says, "Don't touch a box, we are moving back to Boston. Animation Central is offering me a huge amount of money to return." "I can't believe this," my dad says. He looks to his left and gives my mom a giant kiss on the forehead. "We're buying a bigger house." "What? Are you sure?" she asks. "Positive. They got a contract waiting for me to sign. They want me to be at Animation Central on Friday. 10 years for about $5 million, he replied. Before I could figure out what happened, we were on a 3-day trip back to Boston, Massachusetts. I slept most of the way, too pressed to consider, I must go back to Old Town School. My dad quickly unpacked his favorite coffee table, and set it up in the new house, in Boston, Massachusetts. He put a TV on the top of it. This was his soon-to-be study. Abruptly he decided to go out with my mom for a moment and left me alone in the house. I got to exploring and came across his study and sat down at his coffee table. A fresh pack of cigarettes was lying on the table. As usual, my dad left cigarettes wherever he planned on resting. Noticing them, and as he usually says, they calm me down whenever my mom questions him about it, I figured they would calm me down, and I did likewise. I grabbed the lighter, put the smoke to my lips and soon realized it wasn't for me, but at the moment of dislike I knew that I had a problem with Old Town School. I must do something about it. I quickly found myself running out of the house and into the nearest patch of dense forest. I will just live here, I said quietly. After an hour I came to conclude it was a bad idea. I walked back to my house, rather joyfully. The problem appears to have gone. Even that night I slept well. "Brian, you got to get up. The bus will be here shortly," my mom says. I open my eyes joyfully, happy to be alive. Anxiously I run down the stairs. I was pleasantly hungry. "Yes," I said, noticing my mom placed strawberries, grapes, and pancakes on the table. I was so happy to eat that particular breakfast. I didn't want to leave the house, but I knew I had to. It was my duty growing up in a middle-class house. As a matter of fact, to me, every child loved their job at being a child. I placed my dishes in the sink and I began walking toward the bus stop. Everything was fine until I got on the big yellow bus. The other children intimidated me. I did not have one friend and Cindy did not ride that bus. Her parents drove her to school. I felt like I was in a nightmare. Pain hit my stomach. I decided I would sleep on the way to school. Hopefully I will forget my pain, and that the day will quickly pass. I rested my knees on the back of the seat that was in front of me and let them fall asleep. Once I noticed the other children beginning walking off the bus, I attempt to get up. My legs, they fell asleep. I had them pushed up against the seat in front of me the entire trip. I could not walk until the blood began to flow through my legs. By the time the blood began to flow, all the other children had gotten off the bus and began walking through the double doors of the middle school. Putting my full weight on the seats and then on the railing of the bus, I climbed down the stairs. I made it. My legs were truly asleep. It was if they had died, but now they're awake. I looked back at the bus driver, sort of embarrassed. Hoping he had not noticed I let my legs fall asleep, I gave a friendly smile. He smiled back and shut the double doors to the bus. Something rejected me from walking into school that day. It repulsed me, or the power of the other children did, if such can happen, but something drove me out of school that day. That day on Wednesday morning, I decided to walk into the nearest thick, dense forest I could find. The one in the back of the school, hoping no one would notice my escape, but I got bored after a couple of hours and decided to walk into town. After all, it was only about a 15-minute walk. I wanted to see if my mother was at the country store. Maybe she would buy me a soda or something. I did not find my mother when I got to the store, but I did find a free soda. I simply just asked for one. Happy now, I walk out back of the store, and sat down. I sat on a concrete block. The block was supposed to stop traffic, if it were to attempt to park out back. What a sweet taste, sugar, and fizz. I gulped down the whole bottle in a few seconds. As the last drop was about to enter my mouth, I heard a sneeze. Startled, I coughed up the soda that I had in my mouth, wiped my face with my sleeve, and got up to see who was out back with me. Hello, I say, walking toward the sound. A young girl pops out from the side of the building. It was Cindy. Cindy, what are you doing out here? Shouldn't you be in school? I saw you get off the bus and take off, so I followed you into the woods, and eventually down here to the store. Do you have any more soda, she asks. No, but I can go and ask for some more, I replied. Cindy asks, would you please? Wait here, we don't want to get caught or even worse expelled, I said, as I began walking toward the front of the store. Can I have another soda, I asked the store clerk. Yes, just go grab what you want, on me, the store clerk said, pointing toward the coolers. I quickly grabbed 3 bottles of green sugar and without admitting it I walked out of the store. Here, Cindy, some of the good stuff, I said, coming back to where I left Cindy. Cindy smiles and giggles and guzzles down her bottle of green sugar. That was good, she says. The smile on her face began to worry me, and I didn't want her, nor I, to get in trouble for not being in school. Previously, if a child did this, the police would be called. That would make the child look bad. It would ruin their reputation. They would be known to cause trouble. Cindy, we have to go back. We're going to get in trouble. It's only been about 1 hour. Perhaps no one will notice. We can walk back on the woods trail, so no one will notice. You take the front door and I will take the back door. That way no one will suspect wrongdoing. Did you know, Brian, my dad is a police officer, right? Well, we better go back anyway, because, what if he doesn't like me, and wants to make me look bad, and most likely he could, with authority, I said. No, he won't. He is a good cop. Look, we can go back, but you must promise you will come with me to a festival this spring. I can't leave you alone in this school. That will make you look bad. Think, I'm friends with the daughter of a policeman, Cindy says in integrity. Okay, Cindy, thank you. I agree to go with you to a festival this spring. Now let's go back, I answered. Two. Sunny Day Festival. I did not adjust to school, Old Town School. In the first month, I tucked all my hardships on the inside, excusing it all to be, I am new to the school. The second month was worse, but I intensely convinced myself it had got better. At the end of the month, the young girl I met in Georgia, the very reason I wanted to move to Massachusetts in the first place, began to call me on a regular basis. Good for me, I needed some good news. After some time, I needed a reason to treat her, because she had been persistent in continuously calling me. I decided anything would work. I had to respond to her. I had to express I was friendly back, so I invited her. our friend Maj and Cindy to come out for Halloween night. I told them we should dress up and ask the people in the town for candy. Who loved the idea, and thought of it as an exciting, normal thing, until someone pointed out the statistics of the people who trick or treat on Halloween night. That was when we became aware that it might have been strange to knock on someone's house and ask for candy, but to who, Maj, Cindy, and I, it was the best idea that one could come up with. Dead people running around in the night, saying trick or treat. Ha, ha. We must trick or treat, who said. So we continued to. Believe it or not, most houses had candy. Halloween was at the end of the month in October, the month who was supposed to return to Old Town School, at the beginning of the month. Well, she freaked out saying, I am wild, and never made it back to school that year. Her parents decided to homeschool her. I spent most of my free time with her, who and I became best of friends, always hanging around one another. Her father liked me, and thought my dad was a genius. He would do just about anything to keep him at Animation Central. I had all liberty at whose house. Computer programming was whose thing. In other words, it was sort of her drug of choice. She didn't play video games, as would most children her age, especially if they had the equipment she had, but rather she enjoyed coding, in other words, behind the images and videos, which pleasantly, quickly, display themselves on the monitor. Well, she wanted to discover the code to ownership of everything, to possess all code. Most of the time I would sit to her left. Once in a while I would turn to look at her, noticing her long black hair, highlighted with green. I would look into her big, almost slanted, black eyes and question her about what she had discovered or what she knew about everything. I consider myself a smart person, so whatever she taught me, I could apply and figure out a lot about my surroundings, as well as escape some of the problems I came across. For example, who showed me a quick, easy way to skip school. She knew I hated going. She knew my grades were failing according to the school system. She told me that I should call each teacher on a regular basis, to give an intelligence check. Well, it worked, but in doing so, one day, I was welcomed to a fairly wealthy teacher's house. He had other children in the house. To make a long story short, I got close to one of his daughters. So regrettable. I will never forget the trauma afflicted upon my head. Not long after, eyes seemed to be watching me everywhere. Emotions came out of nowhere. Guilt overflooded my tiny human body and my head vibrated every little move I made. Apparently not all are as playful as myself, but don't get me wrong, I am still sort of in the club of communication with the teachers, or rather the school. It's like, if I can prove that I am growing beyond the rest of the students, the school will pass me. I will pass through their interpretation of my language into theirs, i.e. faking the state's requirements, and thus making a passing grade, all done by the hand of the teachers. In the long run they would tell the state of Massachusetts what they wanted to hear. They are not lying. I did do the work. I plainly showed them that I was smart enough. I just didn't do it with the rest of the students. They in the school seemed to want to slow me down, sort of like a glacier in Antarctica. I felt I could have died from lack of learning a new thing in that school. It was so sweet. I got in with the school, but I did not escape the fact that some of the people and children in this new area were a bit different than myself, and my head sure did feel that. So, all the way up to December, I got familiar with calling the school, just familiar enough that they would grasp that I was growing without the structure set out by the state. Most of my education came from who. She taught me the movement of things, time controlling everything, sort of like animation, but on the quantum level. What she taught me was, us being many colors, I see the vibrations that I feel, making all. Who said, say you're in a dark world full of all sorts of vibrations, all placed thereby, she would not say, because it went into a lot of lies, spiritualism, speculation, and no solid evidence, an entire universe of all sorts of basically negative vibrations. Only negative, because everything to a creature is negative, unless we make it part of us, ourselves. Which makes the next part interesting. When we feel a vibration, we make a thing, only ourselves can see, we convince ourselves that it is the thing we came across, but it's not. I said, so, we hallucinate, or we feel these vibrations, and that makes more of ourselves. Exactly. Who said? After her teachings, from 7th grade on, I thought in animation, like second by second motion, it seemed to answer every question I had while growing up. I could now understand how things operated, and by knowing how things worked, I could, in my youth, have my own. I could have my own idea of possessing anything I desired, but the only catch was, say I wanted a huge garden, I could not really have one in the fake way of looking at it. I had to tell myself, I have to wait, because time would not permit much things, without much time. At the school, Old Town School, they were aware that I was growing, but as, a long time, is logical, I could tell they wanted more of my obedience to the system they had set up. Thank goodness it was December, because I didn't have the more to give. December was going to give me some time off. This is when winter break is. What are we going to do during my winter break, I asked. My dad said, your dad created a theater in his recently bought mansion. He mentioned it is as big as a movie theater. In fact, it is a movie theater. He said, the new animation they both came up with was immensely creative, a must-see. They even did a Christmas animation. They want us to watch these animations in the newly created movie theater. Who answered? Yeah, my dad mentioned that. As a matter of fact, next week is the start of winter vacation. That must have been the surprise he has been waiting to show me. How about we spend this week at my house? And besides that, you must get a better look at my house. You haven't really been over there yet, except briefly walking in and chatting for a moment, I said. Okay, let's go there right now. You only have a week before vacation. I just have to pack a few things. Who said? It was about a 2-mile walk from whose house to mine. She packed light and it was not all that cold out, so we walked to my house. As we walk up the driveway to my father's huge estate, I noticed the 2 red doors welcoming us into my father's house. A winding staircase was beyond that. What shall I show you first? I said upon entering my house. I've already showed you my room the last time you were over here. How about I start with the swimming pool, and after that, I take you to the tennis court, and then the extra rooms. We will end the tour with the newly built theater. Okay, who said? I spent that day showing who the entire mansion. When evening came, we had to come up with another thing to do. What about Cindy? Who asked, what if we invite her over? Let's call her and see if she has any plans. Let's see if she has plans for the entire week, even plans for the entire winter break. Let's see if she would want to spend them with us. Okay, I said, and walked over to the phone and began dialing her phone number. After my conversation with Cindy, I said, she doesn't have any plans except us. Good, who says? We start to make plans for a few weeks, plans to entertain us for the entire time. The day after Christmas, Cindy arrived at my house. We got to talking about what we were going to do for the next few days, before the big day, the day we preview the creative animations, whose and my father put together. Brian, Cindy says, the last time I was over here you mentioned trails that the snow machines ride on. Last night it snowed. What if we go behind your house and explore those trails? When you spoke of them, you made them sound so fun, as a dream you never got to have. Who added, yeah, that would be really fun, Brian. Okay, let's get dressed and put on some warmer clothes and then we will go out, I answer. Light blinded our eyes walking out of the house. White covered the earth. A few minutes went by before any of us could see. Okay, the trails should be behind our house. Here, that's where I saw the signs, I said. I hear one of the snow machines. Do you hear that? Cindy asked. Yes, I hear it. It sounds like a car in the woods, who said. And there is a sign. It says snow machine crossing, and there are snow machine tracks, I said, pointing toward the ground. What we can do is walk on the trails until we get tired, and then come back here, I said. Okay, the two girls answered. The forest was extremely beautiful. White covered the forest. Trees were making snapping sounds in the wind. Snow would fall off the tree branches as the wind blew upon them. To me it seemed as if we could walk those trails forever, as if they never stopped. It was sort of like a dream that no one would want to wake up from. Just over another hill. I want to go further. I have to see what's up ahead. I could have almost thought that a gnome or fairy, at any moment, was going to come out of the forest and onto the trail. It was just that magical. Before I or the girls could consider nightfall, dusk was upon us. We thought it just appeared to be getting darker because of the cloud coverage, but it was not. Night was approaching us fast. And when it did, we did not have a way back. At dusk, my dad began to get worried. He knew we went walking on one of the snow machine trails because I told him. He immediately called up Cindy's dad, who rushed to my father's mansion. As the good cop Clint was, he called in for backup, and within an hour, the forest all about the snow machine trails were flooded with cops. Cindy. Brian. Who? The policeman loudly said. 5 miles into the forest, on the trails is where they found us. We were walking back home. We noticed flashing lights in the distance. At first, we wondered what they were, and then we heard our names being called. We're over here, I yelled into the darkness. The two girls followed my example. We're over here. Cindy's father immediately caught up to us. Once he was in front of Cindy, he fell on his knees and wrapped his arms around her, giving her a big hug. My father followed close behind. Somehow, I felt it was all my fault. I did not know whether to say, I am sorry, we got lost, or it was an accident. Maybe I should lie about it. Was this going to be the end of Cindy and I spending time together? Suddenly, before Cindy or I could say anything, who says, a person on a snow machine, pointed us in this direction. We asked this person, because we wanted to make extra sure we were going in the right direction, back home. He said, that way, as who points in the wrong direction. Oh, thank goodness you're all right, Cindy's father said. I looked at who with a grateful expression, hoping that her excuse would excuse all of us. After all, we didn't mean to cause such a panic. I would never put myself or my friends in danger on purpose. This surely would have made us look horrible. The police would have never let me see Cindy again. We all walked back home, escorted by the entire police force. Once we're back home, I changed into some warmer clothes. Cindy, and who did the same. Us three shared the same room for the time we were together. Quick to make our sleeping situation at rest, I say, thanks who, you're the best, and smartest person I'll ever know, or ever will know. Who said, I say same thanks, Brian. Theater day. Okay children, let's come into our newly renovated animation preview theater, my dad says. Yes, awesome, we said, walking down the stairs, beyond the living room, and down a second set of stairs, and finally there we were in the theater room. We take our seat, and the lights went out. My dad brought us popcorn. Beforehand he had mentioned the screening would be a few hours, so I anxiously grabbed as much popcorn as I could. 3, 2, 1, and the animation begins. It was a drama, about the loss of one's land. Something caused this man to roam from town to town. He ends up spending all he has, pleasing others to house him. Over time he depletes his financial account and begins to wear out. He faints in one of the towns. The sunlight noticed and flew out of the sky and fixed the man's body. With that strength he attempted to find land. This time he found success, happy ever after. We applaud my dad's work, as well as whose father's work. That was wonderful, who says. Who said it right? Great animation, Dad, I say. Asterisk. Spring, or rather the end of the school year, came quickly. I did not do as the school wanted me to do, but I did what who advised. I proved myself intelligent, more intelligent than the children they taught. The school, to be praised by the state, passed me as an A student and moved me on to 8th grade. School was ending for the summer, and I had to live up to the promise I made to Cindy, the day we drank soda behind the country store. "Cindy, we're still going to the spring festival, right?" I asked over the phone. "Well, yeah, my dad has made plans to pick you up in his police car next Saturday morning," Cindy said. "Wear something nice, try to dress to impress." "Okay, Cindy, I will, and I will be waiting for him next week." On the day of the festival, Cindy's dad shows up on time, in his police car. "So, why did you bring the police car?" I asked. "Oh, well, we have to be part of the parade. Cindy thought it would be good for you to be part of the parade, to make you feel like part of the town. She tells me you don't blend into Old Town School that well." True, she is right, but I made it through the year. I passed. "Next year I can move on to 8th grade," I said. "This parade will be good for you. If the other children see you in the parade with a police officer, they won't tend to be so mean," Cindy's father added. After a good talk with Cindy's father, I decided to have a great time being part of the parade. I unrolled the window to the passenger side door of the police car, and from time to time I would stick out my hand and wave to the people. At the end of the parade I was let out of the cop car, and I went to find Cindy. With a quick search of the festival I found her. She was next to the fun house. "Brian, how did you like being part of the parade?" Cindy asks. "It was great. I didn't get a lecture or have to be brought to jail," I jokingly said. "That should qualify you to be part of this Old Town, and especially Old Town School. Everyone knows my dad and they like him. If they saw you with him, they will like you too," Cindy explained. "Well, what are we going to do for the rest of the day?" I ask. "Where is who?" Cindy asks. "Oh," she said, she would meet us by the little pop-up market. She wanted us to meet her there, I answer. "Let's go find her," Cindy says. Walking through the freshly mowed fairgrounds, I could smell the fresh-cut grass. Sounds filled the air. From time to time the wind would carry the fragrance of the nearby deep-fried foods. "How much money did you bring with you, Brian?" Cindy asks. "Like $100, I answered. "Good, 'cause we're going to need it. We will be here all day." Eventually we met up with Hu. She was at the market. It was her grandmother's market. I look around and notice a lot of jewelry that I could not understand, like what were the meaning of some of the symbols on some of the art and jewelry. "Hu, what are these and what do they mean?" I asked. "What?" Hu replied. "Your grandmother has paintings, jewelry, dishes, bowls, all this stuff. I've never seen it before. I don't know what they mean. What is behind it? Why is she selling it?" I ask. Hu begins to explain. "My grandmother is from far away. She will not exactly tell me where. She is afraid it will be misinterpreted. What she did tell me was, a couple hundred years ago, her family, all her family, lived in the forest. They lived off the land. To them it was common. They used stones to build houses and wood to hold those houses together. They worked in harmony with the animals, and exchanged their affection to the animals for furs and other pricey things. Brian, you and Cindy see this age and these things, like this food stand or an automobile for example, as normal, as if it was created by intelligence, for us, for our good. We trust all of it. We never consider it could change. It's like we're better than the older people, because it's our time. That's how it was in my grandmother's time. It was her time. She never let go of her time. Most of the items here, for sale, she received by trading with the animals, with the wild. That is why everything is so expensive. The animals or wildlife do not work well with most people, but once in a while they need affection, and so they trade." I had to confirm what she was saying, so I asked, "She trades with the wildlife. I wonder if I could do that in my future, or would I have to be one of the oldies?" "Let's go for a walk, deeper into the fairgrounds, back there by the tree line, you and Cindy. We will not go far, just to where the forest begins. A small river is over there." The three of us walk to the beginnings of the forest growth. Who walks into the forest and says, "Come down this way, there is a small river in here, I want you both to see it"? I stumble down a small bank. I put out my hand to guide Cindy down the bank. We all stand next to the river. I immediately notice the beautiful sunlight shining into the forest, through the trees and onto the small stream. "What's the first thing you thought of when you came down here, to the river?" Who asks. "I want to make a home," I answered. "And you, Cindy?" Who asks. "My father, he might be getting worried about me," Cindy replied. Those are the thoughts of the forest. That is how my grandmother speaks to the wild. Who eventually left the small stream, and went back up the hill to her grandmother, leaving Cindy and I, gazing at the river. I stayed there with Cindy, believing who, after all, she had been the one teaching me, since I moved here to Massachusetts, and so far she has been correct 100% of the time. I took my hand and gently took hold of Cindy's. I knew what the forest said that day, and Cindy did too. Seventh Grade Streets. Chapter 3. Copyright 2020. Brendan Holden. All rights reserved. 3. $2 million summer. "Come on, Brian, we have to leave now, if we want to be there on Thursday," I hear my dad yell. Okay, I'm coming. I'm walking down the stairs right now," I say. It is the beginning of summer and we are going to Sebring, Florida. I wish the days in Boston were colder, then I would have reason to be excited to go to Florida, a climate that's warm even in the winter, but I do not. My father has business to attend to, and we must go. Although I can still be a little excited, it is an adventure, plus my father plans on getting a hotel room for the both of us, a hotel for the rich, and I might meet someone famous or someone I see on TV. We will be there for a few weeks. I would have had preferred to have gone with my mother, but she did not think I would do well flying overseas. My dad and I rush into the car. No time for anything. I climb into the back seat and fall asleep. One day came and another went. I am sick of being in the car, I verbally expressed. "Brian, hold on just a moment. Just a couple of more hours and we will arrive at the hotel. It's a really nice hotel. Rich people have stayed there. In the past it had a reputation as being one of the top hotels in the country. You're going to love it," my dad says. "I love everything you do for me," I answer. "There has not been a thing you have done for me that I've been upset with. There isn't anything you could do for me that would upset me. Everything you do, I put in my good things Dad has done part of the brain," I answer. "Okay, but you're still going to love it. Anyways, where do you want to eat?" my dad asks. Somewhere good. Actually, what about Waffle Plus? I keep seeing that restaurant being advertised as we drive along the highway, I answer. "I just saw that too. Exit 35, the next exit. I will pull off, and we can get something to eat," my dad says. He begins pulling off the highway. Within a few minutes I see a big sign saying, "Waffle Plus." Someone knew well enough to place the restaurant right by the highway, because I could not stop thinking about it, and I needed food now. Good, it's right by the highway. I am very hungry. I can almost taste the strawberries and the waffles, I say. We park out front, in front of the entrance doors. We walk into Waffle Plus. Sounds of chatter could be heard as we look for a table. Let's sit here, Brian, my dad says, pointing to a booth. Soft music played on the ceiling speakers. I pick up the menu that was placed between the ketchup and the napkin dispenser. I look over the menu and decide what I would like to eat. I want strawberry waffle deluxe. Okay, what's that? It's 4 waffles topped with sugar strawberries, flavored with milk cream and maple syrup, plus a side of bacon, I replied. Bacon? That does not sound right, my dad said. That's what it says on the menu. Check this out. On PG-3 it says, chicken on blueberry waffles. It sounds funny, but I've heard some people cover bacon or chicken with chocolate. They say it tastes good. The salt makes all the difference, I replied. Okay, that sounds good, he said. What are you going to get, I asked. Eggs, toast, ham, sausage and potatoes, plus a cup of orange juice and a coffee. The coffee will keep me awake for the rest of the journey. We'll be on the road for a few more hours before we arrive at the hotel to get some rest, my father answers. Ordering our food was now in the hand of the waitress, if she comes to our table. She did. We place our order and the food shortly arrived. I begin watching my dad smoke in front of his plate. His plate was full of food. He had a smoke in one hand and a fork in the other. He did this for the entire time we were there. Dad, you're smoking more than you're eating, I said. Well, you know what, Brian? Most restaurants up north will not permit smoking at all in their restaurants. I miss it. We've only been in Massachusetts for 7 months and everything is different. We live in $1 million mansion. You have wealthier friends. Your mother spends time at expensive parties and I have to be a good human being. Although I am good, I'm just not that good, my dad says. After some time, I said, the smoke smells fine, Dad, that's if you were worried about it. I just can't help but notice your playfulness. I did that same thing last year, when I continued to pressure you into moving. I was being playful, that's what I did. I could not stop thinking about it. Yup, I get it. Come on, it's time to go, my dad says while placing a $100 bill on the bill tray, and we start to move toward the front door. A blast of hot air meets my face as I open the front door to Waffle Plus. I walk to the car, hop in the back of the car, and fall asleep. In a blink of an eye I hear, Brian, get up, we're here, my dad says, waking me up. I open my eyes noticing where we were parked, next to a giant building. That's the place, my dad says, pointing to my right. That's the hotel. I ask, pointing at the building. Sure is, my dad says as he pops open the trunk. We packed light. He had a small suitcase and I had a backpack. We check in at the front counter. Colored lights were welcoming us into the lobby. A small bar sat to the right. Some older men sat at the bar. They were talking to an attractive-looking lady, who appeared to be the bartender. My dad began to argue with the hotel clerk. I was lured to the bar. I walk over and jump up on one of the seats. I look around, feeling much older than I was. How are you doing, sweetie? The young lady says. Great. My dad's here on a business trip, I say. As the bartender was filling a drink, she looks at me and smiles. I fell in love with the moment. The atmosphere said, I am wealthy. It had the type of a look to it, a look of wealth. I could tell it was an expensive place. I could smell it in the wood of the lobby. Brian, my dad yells. Yeah, I'm over here, I answer, as I am getting out of my seat, and I begin walking over to my father. We have to find our room, my dad says. We find our room and explore. I slept most of the day in the back of the car and was now ready for action. Earlier in the day my dad mentioned that this night we had a huge convention to attend. I readied myself, and out we were again on the road, driving to film features. They needed my dad's animation, the animation he was working on this winter, the animation he proudly presented to me, Cindy, and who he needs to give a preview to, sort of like a club. Apparently if they like it, they will pay Animation Central, $10 million for the copyrights to it, which $2 million will go toward my father. We drive to film features. It was in a 5-story building, sitting by the Atlantic Ocean. We struggle to find parking, and we struggle to find the entrance. After some time we just pull over, and look for the entrance, expecting a huge door with a huge sign that said film features, but we didn't find one, and spent 1/2 of an hour looking. To our surprise, the entrance we were looking for was a small door in front of the building, sort of looked like a side door, the door that would lead to a trash can. We walk in, no person checks us in, we simply just walk in and begin searching for people. Dad, are we in the right place? I don't see any other people, I say. We continued walking. We walked through a curtain covering a door, and we see a huge room. People were everywhere. A huge window framed the ocean on the outside. A man notices us walking in. He yells, "Kyle, good for you to make it." He takes my dad off to talk to him, leaving me at the party to fend for myself. What do I do? I will go over to the food. Food is safe, I told myself. There was a variety of food. I could tell these people had money, and a lot of money. I grab a blue pastry and decide I would look out the window. To my left I notice a sliding glass door and change my mind about spending time next to the food and begin to walk outside. If I walk to the ocean, I will spend more time. Once I walk down and back, my dad should be ready to leave, I quietly said. I slide open the door, hoping not to make a scene. I leave the door open, as I begin walking toward the ocean. Crash, crash, the ocean waves hit the shore. I place the blue pastry in my mouth. I look to the left and notice a man. He was fishing. His giant fishing pole hovered over the waves and his fishing line reached far into the ocean. Maybe I should go talk to him. No, I will not, because he most likely does not like children. I place my hand into the incoming water. That is cold. Even in August the water is cold in the Atlantic Ocean. I look back toward the party. I notice the sliding doors are still open. I could hear the chatter from inside the building. Is my dad done yet? I ask myself. I knew they could not be, but it kept coming to mind. The party could be about an hour. I decided to walk around to the front of the building. What a strange town. The streets are so narrow, I thought as I was looking around the town. Little businesses were spread throughout the streets, hair salon, grocery store, nail plus, etc. This is different. This town seems to not have a point at all. It is like its own entity, like it does not need the outside world, yet they needed my dad. Weird. Not much longer, my dad walks out to the car expecting to find me there. Good, Brian, you're out here. I figured you would be. I knew you would be uncomfortable amongst all those adults. How did you know I felt that way? Is feeling that way normal? I ask. The anxiety, the I must get out feeling, or the I'm different feeling, my dad asks. A little bit of everything, I said. It is normal to be uneasy in a new situation, and what makes this situation extremely hard is, it is not permanent, there is not a way to get comfortable. I think that's why there were so many comforts at the gathering, he answers. How did the preview go, I ask. Great. Well, I think great. I thought they would watch it while I was there, but they want to watch it on their own time, so you're definitely not alone on the discomfort thing, my dad says. Did they say they were uncomfortable, I asked. No, but whenever you find rich people taking their time in the workplace, you can be sure it was how they got their riches, my dad says. Are you saying? Yes, discomfort is rather poor, my dad says. I get that. Are we going back to the hotel room now, I ask. Yes, and we can watch a movie or play a game. What about the bar? Can we hang out at the bar, I ask. Okay, why at the bar? He asks. That room is attractive. It's like a part of history or something, I answer. We walk into the hotel. and into the lobby. We take a seat at the bar. "What can I get you to?" the bartender asks. "Will you get Brian a Coke?" "And I want a beer," my dad says to the beautiful bartender. This place is amazing. It's as if it no longer has time, as if it's been sitting here for so long. It no longer exists. Time no longer exists for it. The curtains must have been made in the year 1920, I said. "They were, Brian. That's why we are lodging here," the advertisement said, "furnished with original items. That's what riches are for. They give security, which means if one's material possessions, begins to fall apart, you can fix them. If you can keep your most precious items, you can add to them over time," my dad said. "So cool," I replied. We go back to our hotel room and slept. My dad assured me that the next day we would be out all day. He had to meet up with an old friend, a friend he had not seen since high school. "Brian, get up, you got to take a shower. We're leaving in an hour," my dad barks. I quickly awoke and went into the bathroom. "Make it quick," I told Kevin we would meet him at 10 o'clock, I hear my dad say. I quickly grab the bar of soap. I soap up my whole body and rinse it off. I step out of the shower and hear, "Come on, Brian, we got to go," my dad says. I rush out of the bathroom. We hurry down the stairs of the hotel and walk out to the car that was still parked in the front of the hotel. In a hurry we begin driving. I got lost in the amount of left-hand turns we had taken. I knew we were in, sort of, like, the country land of Florida. I did not see many houses, just this, like palm growth. "I think this is it," my dad says while pulling into the driveway of a one-story house. I noticed the only thing that stood out about the house, there was an American flag in the window. My dad gets out of the car and yells, "Kevin." Kevin's window was open, and he heard him. I see Kevin walk out of his garage. He walks over to our car, to the driver's side door. "Kyle, I haven't seen you in the longest of time," Kevin loudly says. He invites us into his nicely built house. He takes us on a tour. He was proud of his house. He continued to mention he built it. Eventually he takes us behind his house to see a collection of items he proudly gathered over the years. As I gaze around his backyard, I see a car, tractor, a boat, and a small shed. There was not all that much for me to see, so I begin to walk toward the edge of the forest, forgetting about the two men puffing one another up. I notice a rattlesnake which was lying at the edge of the forest. It notices me and begins to rattle its tail. I panic and begin to walk backwards, hoping we made peace, that I would escape. "Dad, a rattlesnake is over there," I said in a panic. Kevin said, "Oh, good thing it didn't get you. There are so many of those on this property. You should stay close to your father. I don't need a dead child on my hands." Fear filled my body. Rattlesnakes? And we are to sleep here tonight? I bet they are in his house too. I wanted to ask my dad to leave, but he looked like he was having so much fun. I knew he would not leave. Night approaches, and Kevin shows us our room. It was small, like the room of a child. I cannot believe my dad is going to make me sleep here. I hate snakes. I did not sleep that night. I kept thinking about snakes. Morning came and Kevin fed us and we left. My father had to wait for a call today on whether he makes a new film. It was very important. Most likely he will spend all day by the phone, and I will play in the hotel. The next couple of days we stayed around the hotel. We played slot machines. We took a couple of walks. We spent time at the bar. The hotel only had about 25 rooms, so most of the time at the hotel we didn't see many other people. But that did not mean it was cheap. It was an expensive hotel, $2,500 a night. After much time, my dad finally got the phone call he had been waiting for. Now we could do some other things we have not done yet, like a theme park. For the next 2 weeks we went to the beach, the movies, hiking, exploring, a theme park, and on the final day we spent it at a campground. $40 a night was the cost a day for our lot at the campground, which was expensive right then. It's a good thing we had bought a tent before we left Massachusetts and brought it with us, because I no longer was sure if my father could spend any more money. We set up our tent by the ocean. Thick vegetation surrounded the tent, mostly vines that grew an inch in diameter. Crickets sounded throughout the night. I fell asleep to their wonderful sound, as well as the sound of the waves crashing on the ocean. Once I awoke in the morning, I hear my father's phone ringing. It must have woken me up. He must have gotten up and forgot his phone. "Dad? Dad, your phone," I yelled out of the tent. "Thanks, Brian," my dad says while grabbing the phone out of my hands. "Hello, great, thank you," my dad said to the person on the other end of the phone. He pressed the off button, looked up toward the sky, and then toward me, and said, "We have to meet a man from Film Features. He lives about 2 houses from the place we were at just a couple of weeks ago, the day when we dropped off the animation." We hurried to the car and began to drive to Fort Pierce, Florida. For a moment we got lost. My dad started freaking out. "You know, Brian, we have to be back in Boston in 3 days. 3 days. We have to find this location. Do you remember which street we took when we came to this 4-street square?" Yeah, we went straight. I can remember, because of that bar to our right. It had people coming in and out of it. It was all lit up, like, it was the place to be," I said. "Good, thanks, Brian." We passed by the building which housed the original gathering and began to pull over 2 houses down. I looked to the right and see the house. It was a beautiful blue house. We hurry out of the car and walk up a narrow flight of stairs. The smell of incense was everywhere. A man opens the door as we get to the top of the stairs. Antiques filled the room we were invited into. Cartoon character posters littered the walls. The man says, "Kyle, I am glad you could come. We like your work. As a matter of fact, we want to use your work, not because we don't have others, but because it's real. People can relate to someone's actual reality better, as yours was." I could feel the emotions attached to it. People love that, especially when it's mixed with friendly colored cartoon characters. "We want it. I made a contract for you waiting for you to sign," the man said, handing my father a piece of paper. My father quietly pulls a pen out of his pocket, walks over to the nearest table, and immediately signs it. "Good, that's great," the man says. They spend some time celebrating before my father and I walk down the stairs and get into our car and begin driving home. Driving home, I got curious to how much actually was at stake for the past few weeks. I said, "Dad, how much was the contract for?" "They are paying Animation Central $10 million for the animation. $2 million of that is going to us," my dad answers. "Good, you win," I said, and we drive home. Seventh Grade Streets. Chapter 4. Copyright 2020. Brendan Holden. All rights reserved. 4. No more school. Within days of my dad and I arriving back in Massachusetts, the fall school year began. I lost my hatred towards Old Town School at the beginning of summer. Once I had been part of the parade alongside of Cindy's father, I let it all go. I expected all to run smoothly. I thoroughly convinced myself everything would be fine. Cindy's dad, Clint, had a talk with the school. He wanted to be sure I was part of the school, and that I was fitting in. And so, once I started school again, I thought everything would be fine. So when I ran into my first problem, I was surprised and resorted to what I did the previous year, which was proving intelligent. I tried using the reputation I gained the previous year, but it wouldn't work. The school puffed up, and took some of Clint's words in fear, and thought, "We must restrain our idea that Brian can learn in such a way," as if they thought Clint's warmth were chains, like he was going to hold them accountable in a bad way. I began to find myself uncomfortable in school. as if they were breathing down my neck. For example, if I didn't show up for school, they would call my father and say, "We need Brian in school. It's not okay for him to miss days. We will have to report it." I am my father's first child. He did not know that they just say, "We must report it," for themselves. They do not say that for the education of the children. But I need an education. I must fight back. Monday morning, I jump out of bed. I ate a quick breakfast my mother had prepared for me and began walking toward the bus stop. It has been months since I got on this school bus and I still feel repulsed getting on. "Hi Brian," the bus driver says as I walk by him toward the back of the bus. "Hi," I say back, considering, maybe I should not sit in the back, maybe that is why I am so uncomfortable. I see an empty seat, 3 rows down from the bus driver. I will sit here. Children were talking throughout the bus, especially in the front of the bus. I had it in my mind that the front of the bus was sort of for the good kids, but I don't know where I got that information from. I suppose the affliction I endured on the bus didn't allow me to properly interpret the situation, so mentally, I sort of thought I'm being one of the good kids. I open my mouth, and now I feel rejected. Pain afflicts my stomach. I think I just said that wrong. Did I sit in front being the misinterpretation? No, it cannot be. For 1/2 of an hour I was afflicted. "Okay, Brian, it will be alright," I say to myself. The day will shortly end. The bus pulls into the long driveway of Old Town School. I pretend to be like everyone else and walk off the bus. I follow close behind the other students. I notice each child holds the door open for the child behind themselves. The light, it burns my eyes. I begin to wonder if that's normal as I walk into the school. My entire being continuously cries, "I got to get out," like an appetite looking for sleep or food, but this was an appetite to leave that school. I look around at the other children. They quickly seem to find something to do. One child finds another and starts talking to them. One plays with some of the teacher's belongings. Another proudly shows off in front of the teacher. What am I going to do? I do not want to be here. I pretend to be interested in a poster hanging on the wall. I want to leave, but I cannot leave. I tell myself, Cindy's dad fixed it. I will give it my best shot. I will talk to some of the other children. "Hi, my name is Brian." I see the other children talking. I should talk too, I say to one of the nearest boys. "Hi," the other boy says. "I'm sort of new here." Before I say another thing, a young girl walks over and interrupts. She appears to take a seat of meaning in the boy's life. "This is Tick. She's my friend in this new school," the boy says to me. I try to keep the conversation going for as long as I can. I invite the boy and his friend Tick to do some other stuff before our first class was to begin. We walk to the cafeteria, to the playground, and I question the boy until he appears calm. These things helped a little, at least to myself they helped. The little bit of problems I had left, I pushed deep within myself. The bell rings. Every child finds their place in class. I take a seat at a round table. This is my place in class. This is more like it, I tell myself, hoping the morning affliction is gone. I notice a few young girls sitting at the table with me. They were at this table last year, and the teacher is the same teacher that taught my 7th grade class. She taught the art class. She still intimidates me, but I tell myself that it is how every child thinks. She is intimidating. It is normal. She not only teaches my first class, but my 2nd and 3rd class as well. After some time in class, she advised us that we need a break. She took us to the cafeteria for a snack. 2 items, or rather 3 items, were to choose from: milk, a cheese stick that peels apart like spaghetti, or a huge pretzel. Cheese was on the inside of the pretzel. I needed something tasty. After all, I am sort of getting uncomfortable. I'll take the pretzel. It was warm, and I could almost taste the melted cheese in my mouth after looking at the poster advertising it. "Okay children, get your snacks. We will take them outside," Ms. Shine said. I walk out with the rest of the children, pain slightly affecting my legs. I take a bite of my pretzel. Okay, now I really don't want to be here after looking at the forest. I consider I am forced into this school. Why aren't we all playing? I got to get out. My own inner truth says, I can't. Okay, I shove it deep within myself and make it through the day. Soon I was back on the bus. I laugh at my hard day, trying to heal myself. I tell myself it will all be alright. I walk into my house. How was school? My dad asks, still excited about his animation being accepted. I'm going to. Who's okay? I rudely say. Okay, don't make your first day back at school sound so fun, he says. I abruptly leave and find my way to whose father's creatively architecturally designed mansion. Who, are you here? I say, knocking on the door. She is not here, honey, I hear whose maid say. Okay, I said and begin walking back toward the road. I must liberate myself. I will walk to the store and get some candy, and once I return who will be back, and I will heal myself. I look back at the maid as I was leaving, and say, do you know when she will be back? Around 7, the maid says. Okay, good. I can spend a few hours at the store that I spent some time with Cindy last year. It still reminds me of her. An old bench sat in front of the store. I take myself and sit down. I begin watching the people as they come in and go out. An elderly lady notices me. She looks at me. Aren't you cute, young N? What is your name? She asks. Brian, I answer. Well, that's a lovely name. Would you like something from the store? Before I could answer, she says, my husband and I, when we were younger, used to come here and get an orange soda. We would sit here until the sun set. You know, if he was out of work, he would need rest. So we would come here. It surely lit up our life. How about I get you an orange soda? She asks me, or rather informs me she is going to. That would be great, I answer, and watch her walk into the store. Not too much later she returns with a white plastic bag in her hand. She hands it to me, and before she turns to go back to her red Cadillac, she winks and says, you will be alright. I figure the soda was due, cause of the school problem. Was that school trying to kill me or something? I ask to justify the goodness I just received. I open the white plastic bag and look on the inside. Wow, a grinder, a soda, candy, and a lighter. Weird, she must have forgotten her lighter. Good, I can use that too, just in case who does not come back tonight. I place the lighter in my pocket and begin to open the bottle of soda. Oh, this is good, the soda is so sweet. The feeling of freedom and rest flooded my body. That lady must have been guardian of the galaxies or a great help or something. That is truly what the doctor ordered. Okay, now I am fine. I bet who is home, but before I leave, I will walk behind the store. Behind the country store I drank soda with Cindy. I will drink it in her remembrance. I walk behind the store. Wow, I like it back here. A wild creature spot. I almost began to throw a party with this unseen critter, but I did not, and began to walk to whose house. Knock, knock, knock. I know that's you, Brian. I'll be right there, who says behind the door. She opens the door, and I say, good, you're home. I just had the strangest experience, but first let me explain my trouble. That's if you have enough, and I can express some pain. Yeah, sure, Brian. Keep in mind I use your entire social existence, she answered. So, you're fine, I say. Yes, go on, tell me what's on your mind, she says. Okay, well. Cindy's dad talked to the teachers at school. He put himself in my seat. He thought he could make a better impression on the town, because the town knew him as the reason for the town. Well, they hid part of themselves from him, sort of misinterpreting what he was giving to me. As dominoes knock one another down, or as the ocean waves force the water towards gravity, they likewise feared fear, knocking one another down. In their fear they began to forcefully hold me to the state's requirements. They think I am held accountable to those requirements. And the worst part, Clint, Cindy's father hinted they were, i.e. liberated to act on my behalf, but he meant they were in mine. They fear him, and cast their weight of fear on me, sort of like a tidal wave. If we keep going this way we will all crash under the force of gravity. What do I do? They're making me sick. I was tormented all day. What am I going to do? I need your help, Who, I said, looking into her eyes, desperate to not be taken captive by the ways of group living, or rather society's ways. Who answers, okay, I get it. If you stay, it's as if you're forced under the weight of gravity, and most likely that will kill you. But if you act without the authority you most likely will look like a bad person. If you're to really communicate with them now, to grow, it would mean a mistake. You most likely would involuntarily damage property, yell, or basically freak out. Exactly, I said. Who looks at me with a serious look. You know what I freaked out about, Brian? I needed space to do wild. It's who I am. They know my dad. So I got away with it. You won't. So you should be on your best, Who says, and looks up toward the ceiling for about 5 minutes, running information through her brain. Okay, I got it. Write a letter to Clint, Cindy's father. Tell him, the teachers fear the state. They fear their punishment as well as Clint's, and in doing so, cast their weight of lacking trust on me. They took my thing and they are not fit. That they most likely will make me look bad, like I cannot live up to the school, which in turn will make them fail the state's requirements. Tell Clint you must talk with me as your own self. If we fail, we should fail together. Write something like that, right now. I will proofread it over and over. I will type it up, and tomorrow morning, we can call a taxi. Hopefully we will arrive at Clint's house before he leaves for work. We will hand him the letter. Cindy should be there, and let us hope she is, because the school is truly ignorant, even towards Cindy. They have good hearts, but it is out of control. This letter should fix it, Who concluded. Okay, Who, I'm going to need a piece of paper, I say. I began to write. Early the next morning, I look over at Who. I must have fallen asleep. I am still sitting on the pillow chair I was sitting on when I fell asleep. Have you slept? I ask. No, I had to make this letter look as professional as possible, plus I had to convince my dad to get us a taxi, which will be here in 1 hour, Who said. Okay, I said, and began to prepare myself to meet with Clint. Honk, honk, taxi is here, Who says. We hurry out the door. We pop open the back right door of the taxi and we both enter through the same door. You're going to Table Lane, the taxi driver says to confirm our trip. Yes, I answer. Clint owns a house about 30 miles away. He lives on a hill, in a nice estate, worth his career and the person he is. We pull up to Clint's garage. We did not pay for the taxi, because Who's father had already paid for it by credit card. Okay kids, we're here, the taxi man says. We both hurry out and knock on Clint's front door. Yeah, hold on a moment, Who is there? Clint asks. Brian and Who, I said, yelling through the door. What? How? Clint says behind the door, which immediately swings open. What are you two doing here? Clint asks. We have to talk with you, I say, pushing my way into the house. Clint calls for Cindy. Cindy, Brian is here. I hand Clint the letter we worked on all night, carefully placed in an envelope, a white envelope, and say, could you please read this? I comfort myself in his house and begin looking for Cindy. I notice her in the living room, and I walk in to greet her. What are you doing here? Cindy asked. Something very important, I answered. Brian, Clint says. Cindy, you both come here. I'm keeping both of you home today. Actually, I'm not going to work today either. This is too important. I fully understand this problem. You and Who ought to be proud of the way you're handling this, Clint says. What is this, Dad? Cindy says to her father curiously. Clint hands her the letter, and he says, "Thank you, Brian." Asterisk. Clint kept Cindy and me from school, for the day, and not just for that day, and not just a few weeks, but the entire year. Clint was genuinely concerned that the school stood fearing the law, and in fearing the law, made a problem and cast their burden upon the children. He continued in his mind visualizing Cindy never having the opportunity he had, to grow as a society. He was scared that she would have to start from scratch. He explained that it never would work, the way the school system was. He was sure of the letter that he proofread over and over. He did not decide to homeschool us that year. He let us do as we pleased. He said, if we were to start from scratch, we should do it now, and perhaps Brian is right. Staying on the foundation that we started on is wise, the best. Clint let us learn the way we wanted to. Cindy and I grew, and we would assure Clint that we had reason to do what we did around his house. For that entire school year, I did not miss a day at Cindy's house, but I became aware that I was missing a part of Cindy. Every so often, throughout the day she would take a walk. I felt as an outsider. If I saw Cindy take this time when I was in front of Clint, I would cover it up by looking at him and giving a smile. Every time it happened I thought, how could I fix this, for myself? I knew she could not be doing anything that far out of the normal reality we lived in, to be hiding something. Slowly I discovered what Cindy developed to heal her problems around her father. She had to heal small faults he caused while she was growing. One day I guessed to what she was doing in those moments. I had slowly got so uncomfortable being the outsider in that part of her life. Cindy, I can talk to the trees and they talk back, I said. How? She asked. Because if it finds me, or rather shall I say itself, lacking, it will replace the lack through its roots. The earth gives it stuff, plus it can take stuff off the sunlight. It talks to the surrounding forest for me, I answered. That's what I do every day when I go outside. I get medicine, she said. You do, I responded. You don't know, she said. Well, I believe me, but I didn't have that part of you, I said. Well, I have a continuous negative thing about my existence. I don't think hard about it. I don't look for its root. I simply grab something out of the forest and eat it. It's sort of like a secret, she said. Yeah, I got that. Let us go out to the forest. I begin to remember what helped me, the elderly lady at the store. I kept her lighter. I have had it in my pocket ever since. I knew what I could do to help myself. Cindy, you put the forest in your mouth, right? Yes, she replied, grabbing a leaf and putting it toward her mouth. I put my hand in my pocket and pulled out a lighter. I flick it with my thumb. It sparks. I do it again and I see a flame. I grab the partially bit leaf out of Cindy's hand and put it on the flame until it begins to smoke. I begin to breathe in the smoke. That smells so good, Cindy says. I feel better now, I said.